Teachers, what's the funniest answer you've gotten from a student that technically wasn't wrong? I asked, when is a time that you have used integrity? He wrote down, I wash my hands after going to the bathroom even if no one is in there. Santa approves. My sweet little 7-year-olds overheard a 5th grade boy say, don't be freaking stupid, to his friend. They look up at me eyes wide and say, ooh, he said stupid. This is incredible. Taught in a K-8 school, that makes sense. We had a teacher who was shooting the breeze in the hall with a 7th grader say, no way, shut up, in a joking manner. Kindergarten class was lined up in the same hallway and one little girl turns to the next person in line, does the loud, you're in trouble inhale, and says, he said the S word. Teaching English to middle schoolers in Korea, asked, okay, what's another way you can express surprise in English? After going over expressions like, no way, are you serious, and are you kidding me? A kid yells from the very back of the room, what the frick? Found the RTS gamer. Why are you late? The bell went off before I got here. That's genius. We'll use this tomorrow. I really wanted to try out this new joke. In grade 9 English, we were studying The Hobbit. Our bonus question for the test was, what word does Gollum never say? The answer, of course, was I. But one kid put down pumpernickel, and the teacher was like, heck, you're right, have a mark. I teach English to Vietnamese kids. I asked, what is the population of Vietnam? The kid quickly surveyed the room and said, more than 15. This guy is going places. Winning. This makes me so happy. I work with a guy whose name is Win-Win. He made a shirt that says, all I do is win-win-win. The assignment was write the following numbers in all letters. The kid answered 3, 4, 15, 16, 21, 22, and so on. I gave him full points. It took me way too long to realize what the joke was. Took me a second. The following second, I fell in love with the kid. Phys ed teacher here. I always wear shorts teaching. Parent-teacher conferences roll around. Grade 1 student comes up to me with her parents. Mr. Famous 1187, I've never seen you wear pants before. I've never responded quicker to comment before in my life to clear that up. Reminds me of when my wife worked in an undisclosed location women's shelter. My daughter wanted to see where mommy worked, but we could never go. I was picking up my daughter from school when she said, in the middle of the crowded school hall, Daddy, can we finally go visit mommy in the shelter? This reminds me of my nephew when he was 3. We dropped his mom, my sister, off at work, where she met a colleague outside and went in with him. Back at home, my nephew reported to everyone that he'd seen mommy go away with a man. I worked in a special needs class for a year and there was one kid with a textbook case of Asperger's syndrome. Very bright, very tough nut to crack. I tried to tell him a corny joke once and he was not having it. Why did the chicken cross the road? He likely had business over there or was compelled by force. Well, okay. Easily my favorite memory of that class. My friend is also autistic, has led to similar punchlines to the classic corny jokes. Why don't people play poker in the jungle? Because the undiscovered tribes who inhabit the jungles have had no contact with Western culture. Therefore, they would have never heard of any game called poker, let alone know how to play it. I am autistic and can confirm. I actually do have enough understanding of humor to get most of the classic punchlines, but trying to keep a straight face is funnier. Not a teacher, but someone told me this. What side of the road do people in France drive on? Miss, they drive on both sides. They drive on the right side. Technically correct everywhere. What happens when someone drives on the wrong side of the road? You are no longer correct. In 7th grade, on a test, the question said, why do some people see some technology as positive and others see the same technology as a problem? And a kid simply put, because some people are Amish. I remember in year 3 we had to answer a logical question about why there might be an uneven amount of shoes at the door. I recently watched Titanic for the first time, so decided to write one person might be a one-legged prostitute. It helped that my mum was a parent helper that day. I mean, why else would there be an uneven number of shoes? Name 2 ways to determine the height of a building using a barometer that is exactly 1 meter long. 1. Take the barometer to the top of the building, drop it, and time how long it takes to hit the ground. 2. Find the owner of the building and say, hey, I have this really awesome barometer I'll give you if you tell me how tall your building is. 3. Run a plumb line to the roof and mark it. Use the meter-long barometer to measure the length of the plumb line. 4. Stand the barometer on the end and measure the length of the shadow it casts. Measure the length of the shadow cast by the building. The ratio of the length of the barometer to the length of its shadow will be the same as the ratio of the building height to the length of its shadow. 5. Place the barometer on the edge of the roof, from the ground. Use a laser range to find the distance from the ground to the barometer. 6. Use the mercury in the barometer to create mercury fulminate. Use the mercury fulminate as an igniter for a large amount of black powder to demolish the building. The building's height is now 0. Not a teacher, but a fellow student once answered, in the head, to the question, where was JFK shot, instead of the intended answer of Dallas. I mean, he was also shot in his car. I wrote an exam where the question was, can you name 3 models of DNA replication? She wrote, no. I mean, that was bad question writing on your part. Same kid on the same quiz. Describe the bus ride at the beginning of the chapter. It was a bus ride filled with action, but also with emotion. What happens at the end of the story? The story ends. The kid's going to be a politician someday. In 9th grade, my teacher was given a 6-week vacation, so we had a sub and all these silly quizzes each day about the book we were reading, Animal Farm. The last 2 questions were, what do you think will happen in the next chapter? And in the end. I eventually got tired of writing it and said, they're all going to die, over and over. She came back and laughed and said, well, you're not wrong. I've got a story from my fiance's childhood. They were testing her intelligence or awareness and showed her an image of a TV in a room. The TV was turned on, showing a cartoon, and had a plant on top of it. Question: what's on the television? Answer: a plant. Apparently, she just kept insisting in utter frustration until the administrator bothered to look at the image and not the answer sheet. This reminds me of a friend's story. I don't know about public schools, but for sure at private schools, you get a little quiz-type test with a teacher before they confirm you're ready for kindergarten. One of the things they had to do was identify pictures. He aced the section except for the picture of the airplane. He looked and thought hard and then burst into tears saying, I don't know what that is. Turns out his dad worked for Boeing and he was trying and failing to discern exactly what model plane the super generic picture was depicting. During a similar test, I was completely sure the color I was supposed to identify was dark blue, not black. I was so insistent that the tester got a few other people to look at it and they decided that it really was a very dark blue. I teach and coach baseball. After our shortstop got thrown out on second for the 3rd out, I told someone to pick up Will, in baseball terms meaning get his glove and hat so that he can go out to the field. This kid who was new to baseball, a big lineman type football player, claps his hands together and goes, It's okay, Will, you'll get them next time. I cried laughing. That's funny. Similar thing happened in an intra-squad scrimmage with my high school team a couple of days ago. Our coach told this kid, Sam, to pick up Jacob. Sam, who is both the worst player and the funniest player on our team, we call him the bench captain, says, That's weird, but okay. Walks up to Jacob, literally picks him up and carries him all the way out to left field where he's playing. Not a teacher, but I work with kids. Trying to delicately explain to a 3-year-old why she should be kind to her mommy. You shouldn't say those mean things to mommy when she's sick. Who looks after you when you are sick and makes you feel better? The doctor? Well, frick. Did you just swear in front of a 3-year-old? She taught me how to swear. I teach English in Japan. When teaching my students, I asked, what do we say when someone is being too loud? One smartass says, shut up forever. More like, forever. I had never said this. No clue where he learned it either. I nearly lost my crap, but he wasn't wrong. The correct answer is be quiet, please, which I told him was more polite. He just grinned as if he knew but didn't care. Smart kid. I'll miss him when I change jobs. When I was on an exchange trip to Japan, a kid walked up to me with his friends, said peen to me, and walked away. That would be the highlight of my life. Not the teacher, but witnessed this in class. Sociology professor. Why do you conform? Student. It has always been my goal in life to blend in. Sociology professor. No more questions for you. On a 3rd grade Charlotte's Web quiz, give 2 pieces of evidence that support this statement. Charlotte was a good friend to Wilbur. She comforted him and she didn't let him become pork. You know what I don't get about that story? Why is the pig the one who becomes famous? The real news is the super genius spider who knows how to think critically and write in English. Who cares what it thinks about the pig? I want to know its thoughts on the origins of reality. I have posted about this before. I am not a teacher, but my wife is an elementary school teacher. The kids were practicing their 2's times tables, and the question said something along the lines of, John lives in his house with his mom, dad, brother, and grandpa. How many total hands do the people in John's house have altogether? The answer they were looking for was 10, and they wanted the students to show 2 times 5 equals 10. This young man instead wrote, "Not enough information. What if someone lost a hand?" He wasn't wrong. My wife just wrote "good thinking" on his assignment and gave him full credit. The kid was bright and knew his times tables, so that wasn't an issue. She also had his older brother as a student and said they were both smart but jokesters. My wife now teaches kindergarten. This was when she taught 3rd grade, and said she misses the funny responses on tests. She used to have a full Word document of the funniest answers. Not a teacher, but just a witness to this hilarity. In science class in high school, our teacher was talking about electricity and lightning and the effects of being electrocuted. He asked if anyone happened to know what is the first sense you lose when struck by lightning. Without missing a beat, a girl put her hand up and answered in all honesty, "Your sense of humor?" The class had to stop for a few minutes until everyone could regain their composure. Seriously though, what's the first sense you lose? It's your sense of hearing. When I used to teach anatomy, Anthony named this bone. Femur? Is it a left femur or a right femur? Yeah. Anthony named this bone. Frederick. Elementary school kid saw the answer key. He swore he came up with "answers may vary" all on his own. What's sad is that we had to grade a first semester chemistry test once at university that was made for the medical students. I don't remember if the medical students were at first semester too. They just took the test together with the first semester chemistry students, but had an alternative version anyway. The thing is, the grading sheet with the right answers was leaked beforehand. One student wrote the correct answer down and then wrote 1 point for each correct formula underneath. How do you finish school without walking in front of a car if you are that damn stupid? In high school, classes were in Spanish. A teacher was angry about people copy-pasting online material from homework. She claimed one essay even contained a "click here if you want to know more about Tutankhamun." One of my classmates started laughing and the teacher told him, "You shouldn't be laughing, you didn't even realize your essay was in Portuguese." I wish I was making this up. Not a teacher, but something my brother answered for homework. My brother was in year 1 and his homework was to draw a balloon blown up. He drew a picture with a lot of squiggly shapes spread out across the paper. He took it as the balloon blew up, like a bomb, so he drew the leftovers of an exploded balloon. His teacher loved it and gave him full marks. Competently drawing the leftovers of an exploded balloon sounds a lot more challenging than drawing a single circle and a rectangular basket connected by lines. Or forget the basket because it just said balloon, not hot air balloon. Even easier. Name something living. Fox. Name something non-living. Fox poop. Better answer would be dead fox. Non-living means it was never alive. A dead fox was alive at some point, so that's actually a worse answer. Not a teacher, but a witness. In high school history class, the teacher asked, "What was the peace treaty that ended World War II?" This was a trick question because there wasn't a single treaty that ended the war. This one kid blurted out the Manhattan Project. The teacher laughed so hard that he went and got the other history teacher and had the kid tell him the answer too. This reminds me of high school when I had this pretty attractive history teacher. She was talking about jewels or something at a museum and I blurted out, "Miss, I can show you some real nice jewels." And everyone burst out laughing and the teacher got very red and flustered and embarrassed. I looked confused because I meant I would show her big diamonds and rubies, like to jokingly woo her, but the class and teacher took it as I was referring to my genitals. Teaching grade 5, students were fooling around during group work, so I said sarcastically, "Do I need to stand here and watch you do your work?" To which the student responded even more sarcastically, "Well, you don't have to stand, you can grab a chair and sit." I can't remember which grade it was, but probably 2nd or 3rd grade. The teacher was asking something relatively simple, and no one wanted to or knew the answer. What's going on here? There should be hands up like trees in the forest. Maybe this is a logging area, said the joker of our class. There was a buddy of mine in college, Jay, who was legendary for his witty responses in class. One, we were training to be RAs, and the residential life person asked, "What are some things that as an RA you shouldn't do in your dorm?" People were saying stuff like drinking, etc. Jay raises his hand and gets called on and says, "Practicing medicine without a license." The trainer was like, yeah, I guess that's true." 2. The same guy was in a film class. The teacher asks, "What technique defined the scene that we just watched?" Jay raises his hand, gets called on, and says, "Long, awkward silences." Teacher, could you give an example? Jay, this is a awkward silence. I used to teach preschool. One time, when we were eating lunch, one little girl called another kid in the class stupid. A third preschooler, who was a stickler for the rules and a bit of a tattletale, overheard and began admonishing the name caller. "Don't call people stupid," she exclaimed. "Stupid is a bad word and we don't say bad words." A fourth child, Henry, overheard this announcement. Henry was always getting into trouble. The smart ones are all troublemakers at that age. He was my favorite student. He looked directly at me, raised one eyebrow, and said, "Oh yeah? Bish and frick are bad words too. We don't say those either." I died. You are choosing a book for reading. ESL teacher. I had my students do an activity where they had to give directions based on a map and situations I had chosen. The final question was more complex, and one of my students wrote, "Way too difficult, take a cab." Yeah, I had a smartass do something similar in my directions class. Me. How do you go to the bookstore? Student. Use Uber. Funny the first time, less so the next 7. I co-teach a class and do a lot of the grading. Kids will write, "I love teacher A," and I'm like, "Haha, this is teacher B. Nice try." Student. "Oh teacher, you look so handsome today." Me. "Yes, I know, but you still have to take your quiz." I've taught English in Korea and Japan, and while maybe not that funny, one student who wanted to say something like afterwards or in the end wrote, "The after was here." I stopped for a moment and just stared off into space after reading that. I tried so hard and got so far, but the after was here. It doesn't really matter. My godfather is a lobster fisherman, and all of the kids in the family would go out on the boat with him from time to time. There was a running joke with my uncle, dad, and godfather. They would get a kid to bait a trap, then applaud them for being a master baiter. My cousin went back to school after summer vacation, and when the teacher asked what she did that summer, she proudly stated, "I became a master baiter." I want to know how the teacher reacted so badly. She called my aunt and uncle to ask them what was up. My cousin was so embarrassed she cried and wouldn't go to school the next day. This is intentional, but I teach a foreign language, and so when I introduce the word for "I don't know," I call on a student who typically gets answers wrong and ask them to translate the word as if she should know it. When the student inevitably responds, "I don't know," I tell them that they're right, and the look on their face is always priceless. What does IDK mean? I don't know. Nobody seems to know what that means. Not a teacher, but I remember something I did when I was in grade 2. The student teacher took us into a private room, one by one, for eye exams. I've never taken an eye exam before, and it wasn't really explained to me what was happening. I just sat down and was asked to read the first line of the chart, then the second, then the third. By the time it came to the 4th line, I was like, "It's too small for me to read. 1 minute, please." Then I got up and walked over to the board and started reading the letters. Apparently that's not how you do eye exams. A similar thing happened to me. They took us into a room to test our eyes, so I left my glasses in the classroom. After a couple of lines, they recommended glasses, so I went and grabbed them. They looked at me like I was crazy. "Hey man, you wanted to test my eyes, not my glasses." I did the same thing. I had an awful eye doctor who messed up my prescription, so for years I could see better without my glasses than with them. The school decided to test us one day, and I couldn't see the board out of my really bad eye, let alone any letters. They proceeded to chew me out about not wearing my glasses and wouldn't let me explain. I hated those school nurses. My dad used to coach basketball and was trying to get the kids into a 2-3 zone. He yelled out to one kid in particular who was in man-to-man, "What defense are we playing?" The kid slaps the floor and says, "Tough defense!" Unrelated to this post, but related to this comment, I was working for a carpentry company framing up houses. I like to say this because company was a boot camp for framers because of the gung-ho, hold nothing back work ethic. Anyhow, I had an appointment that was very important that I arrive on time and in the Florida heat. Any excuse to quit early is important. I know it is getting close to my takeoff time. I ask the foreman, "What time is it, Matt?" He yells back, "It's game time, baby!" I lowered my head in defeat and went back to work. Me. The quiz tomorrow will be on student. Paper! Everyone laughed and I rephrased the question. Well, it's better than stone tablets, eucalyptus leaves, and blood ink. As an EA, I gave a group of 2nd graders a worksheet about the main idea and detail. In the instructions, they were told to circle the main idea and underline the details. One child returned the paper to me very promptly, having underlined the phrase, "the main idea," and having circled the details in the instructions. I asked my students to draw a picture of a ninja chicken on an exam. One student drew nothing and pointed out that the chicken was such an effective ninja that he was invisible. Checkmate. What kind of exam was that? High schools in Alabama have really let their standards slip. Extra credit problem on a test that was very difficult. Like crazy difficult. Involved many steps and probably had to do with finding out the rate of oxygen consumption of reptiles. I hadn't made the answer key yet. Very few students tried any of the extra credit problems, and one answered all of them. But for the last one, they just put, "I don't want to do this problem. Neither did I." Gave them the point. This reminds me of a comedy bit I heard a while ago. The kid was in elementary school. I forget which grade, and the teacher asks him who shot JFK. The kid simply looks at her and innocently says, "I didn't do it." Comedian says this was in New York back in the 80s, and he was raised in a stereotypical gangster movie environment. Just for background, the teacher decides to call the kid's house because she's concerned about the answer he gave earlier. Dad picks up the phone. The teacher explains his son's behavior. Dad simply replies, "If he says he didn't do it, then he didn't do it." Troll dad is the best dad. Not a teacher, but a friend of mine couldn't remember what country wasn't a part of the UK on a test, so she put Mexico. I asked the 3-year-old what love was for a Valentine's Day card to his parents. His response, "Maybe love is what tornadoes need. We call him the professor because he teaches us new things every day. This is it. Best in the thread." We were talking about the Fukushima nuclear plant being hit by the tsunami. The brilliant young lad that was most engaged wanted to exclaim his understanding of the situation, but his slip of the tongue led to, "Nuclear pants are dangerous." We all agreed, and wrote the quote up on the board as a keeper for the rest of the school year. Shout out to Hot Wheels. This was not his only board-worthy quote. I call dibs on Nuclear Pants for my band name. Atomic Pantaloons could be the cover band for Nuclear Pants. Question: what ended in 1856? Answer: 1855. And this is how we learned the importance of asking precise, unambiguous questions. Exactly. I mean, he wasn't wrong. Thanks for watching until the end. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, and if you haven't done so yet, please hit that notification bell so that you know when our next video is up. For more videos just like this one, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.